Hello everyone, as of a few minutes ago I just finished my reread of Bleach from issue 1 to issue 686 and I'm fine really. I didn't foresee the fact that rereading it would, subsequently end up with me finishing it and running out of Bleach again and reliving 2016, but really I'm fine. We still don't have any news as to whether Kubo's gonna continue the Hell arc, meaning that my worst fears probably came true when I translated that tweet. The one that was like, oh, this is just like a what if scenario about the one shot. What if Bleach were to continue, this is what it would look like. It's not actually gonna continue, because who would want that, right? No, seriously though, rereading Bleach has brought so much joy back into my life that this series originally brought into my life. It was a pure reliving of the story, not just because I love it so much, but because, especially with this second half, I forgot so much of it and got to relive it again as if for the first time, especially those last 50 chapters or so. So before we get too far into this, I assume if you've clicked on this video you already know, but this is the second video I've made about this reread. The first video is already earlier in my channel. It covers the start of the manga all the way up until the end of the Arrancar arc, and this video will be covering me rereading from the Fullbring arc all the way up to the end of the 1000-year Blood War arc. And for those of you who may be watching at some point in the future and you don't have all of the dates in your head, this is also after the special one-shot was released, as I just previously mentioned. Now, the majority of this video is going to be me talking about the 1000-year Blood War arc, but I feel like I should address the Fullbring arc, and I'm not going to quickly sweep it under the rug and be like, oh yeah, that was the Fullbring arc, it was fine. I want to talk about it, give it actual, thoughts. That is, after all, the name of the series. I've never loved a hero loses his story and has to live in the real world without his powers kind of trope. I've always hated it. It always kind of turns out boring. And I saw a lot of talk online about how the Fullbring arc was underrated, so I went into it with optimism, and yeah, there is a lot to love about the Fullbring arc. I'm going to put it out there, it's a good arc, it's fine, it's a much needed catch up with the characters in the world of the living to see how their lives have progressed. I do love a time skip, so it's kind of balancing the scales there of loving the time skip but hating the losing your powers arc, and I think it was not only very much needed, but very well pulled off, at least in terms of being like, look at what these characters are like now. One shining note that I particularly liked was Orihime. She's just, ever since the Fullbring arc, like in fact throughout the entirety of this manga, she has stood out to me as a character which has been underserved a little bit by the fanbase, or at least certain sections of the fanbase, including myself the first time reading through Bleach or watching through Bleach. I would always make jokes about how she literally just says nothing but Kurosaki-kun, and like, how she Kurosaki-kunned him back to life as a hollow, and how that was the epitome of her character. She just existed to better Ichigo, but like through this reread I've really come to appreciate her more as a character in her own right, with her own strengths, and her own strengths may come from her love for Ichigo, but it's still strength in the face of massive adversity, and I think she's really cool, and she's really cheerful, and she's just great. I'm sorry, Orihime, I did you dirty in previous years, but now I appreciate you for who you truly are. I don't think she's the best written woman in all of fiction or anything like that. There's still some issues, but I think she's great as a character. In contrast, I found that Chad very much faded into the background in the Fullbring arc and the 1000-year Blood War arc. He was just kind of there. He didn't really do anything, say anything, or grow in any way. I mean, okay, in the Fullbring arc he did kind of show up and have his own thing of like, oh, I figured out that my power is Fullbring, and Ichigo, like, I'm gonna help you understand Fullbring, but it was literally like a couple of panels here or there. That being said though, damn, in the final issue of the manga, when you got to see everyone 10 years later, and like, he's on TV, damn, Chad fucking glowed up. Although, at that point in the manga, everyone's attractive as hell, so, I mean, Anyway, something that really stood out to me about the Fullbring arc is just how desperate Ichigo was to get his power back. He arguably went to lengths that portrayed him in a bad light. I wouldn't say he was necessarily doing good guy things throughout this arc, because not only does he desperately grab for power, which is obviously so that he can protect his friends, but is on some deeper level him just wanting to get over the feeling of powerlessness. It's kind of a thing that was alluded to with his fight with Grimjow. It's like, did you come here to rescue Rihime? No, you came here to slay Grimjow because you wanted to win. It's that kind of primalness that Ichigo kind of has a little bit in certain points of the manga. But not just that, his lust to kill Tsukishima, like, not to... Wait, is he called Tsukishima? Yes, he is. His lust to kill Tsukishima is like... yeah, he's going like, oh, if I kill Tsukishima, will the powers be undone of him altering the past of my friends? But like the way Ichigo is drawn on those panels looks so frantic. It's like, it's kind of eerie. He's almost an antagonist in that particular arc, and I thought it was kind of cool. Like, up until this point, Ichigo was just kind of good guy Ichigo trying to protect everyone, so it was kind of cool to throw him through this. Although I will say there was kind of a lack of like any kind of, oh, I shouldn't have been like that, I'm sorry, or oh, Ichigo, what are you doing? Like, you shouldn't be pursuing it in this way, this is the wrong way of doing it. None of that happened, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, that was a Fullbring arc. I thought it was alright. The key here is, in this video, I was reading Bleach weekly throughout all of these issues, so I've only ever read this stuff week to week. I've never experienced it all in one batch reading, or not one batch reading, but binging it over the course of a few weeks, which kind of helps you to see the story at its intended pacing, which is something we'll be talking about a lot more with the 1000-Year Blood War arc. But in terms of a Fullbring arc for that, yeah, it's a lot shorter than I remembered. I remember as Ichigo's power was evolving, it was exciting, but at the same time it was a bit like, oh, this is kind of like store brand Ichigo, you know? It was a little bit like, is this really where this manga's going for a little bit? But in retrospect, it's easier to appreciate the arc for what it did for the characters in the time skip, so I'm cool with it. Plus, Ichigo's post-time skip Shikai and Bankai looks super cool, and I'm kind of sad we didn't get more of it. So yes, 1000-Year Blood War arc. This is a behemoth of a thing to talk about. I remember, let's go over my initial impressions when I first read it. At the time, there was a lot of talk, and I feel like it should be said I was active on Reddit throughout every kind of discussion post talking about the manga. So that would have definitely influenced my thoughts and the way I saw it. There was a lot of talk about the pacing being off, or like the story going a little bit downhill, or the quality just dipping a little bit, not in terms of the art of course, but in terms of the storytelling. And some of those criticisms I do still agree with, but I will say that reading it, binge reading it, like without any kind of time, without waiting week to week, really does help smooth over a lot of those criticisms. Like, it doesn't change them, but the fact that you're not sat there simmering for weeks over the fact that you're not entirely happy that this guy pulled out this power and it seemed like a bit of an ass pull, really helps things. You just kind of go, huh, alright, well that happened, and then you keep going instead of, you know, thinking about it for a week. For those of you who have read 1000-Year Blood War on a week-to-week basis as it released but haven't gone back and reread it, I think it's really worth doing. It's like, and you know, there might be some people who only ever read the manga week to week, like they were with it from a super early point. If you've never binge read the manga, do yourself a favour, binge read the manga. It's such an enjoyable experience when you do that. Not better, but different, but also maybe slightly better, I don't know. So something interesting I found when I was reading the 1000-Year Blood War arc, as I already mentioned, I forgot a lot of it, but interestingly, the longer it went on, the more I forgot. So I remember most of the stuff about the early parts of the story, but it's really the later half. Because this story spans about 200 issues. I haven't got the issues right up in front of me right now, but let's just say about that. Might be more 250, might be more 180, I'm not sure. But I feel like I remember the first half of it, and then the second half of it was a lot more grey area. And when you remember a story, you kind of, or at least I, tend to remember it in terms of structure, and when that base structure isn't in your mind, you forget so much stuff. I have a page of notes about the stuff I've forgotten, because I thought it might be interesting to go over them. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over every single major detail that I forgot. Are you ready? Because it's quite a big document, and if you've forgotten a lot of stuff too and you want to go and reread it, thanks for watching. Go reread it and enjoy it for yourself. If you remember everything, let's go and do this. I forgot a small detail that the spirit wall that falls down in front of Ichigo at the start of the Soul Society arc to stop him from entering the Soul Society originally comes from the Zero Squad Palace. That's where it originally resides. I forgot that Ganju is revealed to be training with Ginjo Tsukushima and quote-unquote the old dude who, now that I think about it, never actually turned up again. But I also forgot, even at this point, that Ginjo and Tsukushima did show up again towards the very end of the manga. More on that later. I forgot Kon shows up. I forgot Kon gets big. I forgot that Ishin was revealed to be the Squad 10 captain, which I think it was Squad 10. I wrote Hitsugai as captain. I always forget the squad numbers. It is mentioned that White was made using a Soul Reaper's soul. Later on they kind of mentioned that it's multiple Soul Reaper souls, but at this point I was like, whose could it be? It seemed like it was going to be a reveal, so I don't know if that could maybe happen in a potential future. Who knows? Might be worth bringing up. I forgot that Komamura becomes a man, and we learn why he was a wolf. I do remember him turning into a basic ass wolf at the end of a fight. I just forgot that he turned into a man and that his Bankai turned into like a dead version of itself, which was pretty metal. No one can ever accuse Komamura of not going all out like he accused, who was it, Ikaku? Yeah, he accused Ikaku of not going all out in the Karakura Town arc. I've just put 2 and 2 together on that, actually. That's pretty cool. I forgot that Renji's Bankai becomes So Ozabimaru. I probably butchered that pronunciation, but it went from being that giant thing that he smacks around to being more of a clad-based Bankai, which he wears, and he has a big baboon arm on one hand and a cool-looking snake fang on the other for like a sword thing. It looks very cool, but I do wonder if he's gonna miss having the destructive capability of his previous Bankai form, or if he can even still use it. Seems like quite a rapid change in power, so that's interesting to me. I forgot that Iwak absorbs the souls of Quincy's, and I forgot that he absorbs the soul of Shinigami, apparently, unless I misread that, because it doesn't ever seem to come up again. He does this to keep his power. If he stops absorbing souls, he goes back to being blind and deaf, which is interesting. I forgot that Yachiru has her own Shikai. How does that work, given that she's the manifestation of Zaraki's powers? Like, what? The dude's just that damn powerful that the manifestation of his Zanpakuto in itself has a Zanpakuto? I said Zanpakuto 2 different ways, don't at me. I forgot about Getsuga Jujisho, which is the one where he does the Getsuga Tensho motion, but then with his other Zanpakuto, or blade, or I don't know if it's technically 2 different Zanpakuto. That's a whole fucking thing. But with his other sword, he does a vertical Getsuga Tensho, and the 2 of them fly forwards in a cross formation as Getsuga Jujisho. It never happens again, but I thought it was pretty cool, so fuck me, I guess. I forgot that Mayuri brought a Rancor back from the dead. I forgot that Hitsugaya got turned into a zombie, but I remembered pretty damn quick when Zombie Girl turned up. I forgot that Kensei Rangaku and that other captain who does the kind of music-based Bankai also got turned into zombies. It's fine, they got better. That's actually a good segue into a criticism I have. Earlier on in the manga, wounds are treated a lot more realistically. At this point, I guess we'll get to the Kira thing. Although yes, the zombieism is explained away via Mayuri solving it, because there's 2 different forms of zombieism. You can Zombie Girl can zombify people before they're dead, and I guess that's why they were rescuable, but yes, that was explained. Some of this stuff, like Kira, was not explained, but again, we'll get to him. I forgot that Ganju appears and helps Ichigo and team again, and never brings up the fact that he was training with those Fullbringers again. I did remember Grimmjow, who could forget, but I did forget Nilil, Ruruka, and Yukio showing up. And Ruruka and Yukio doing their whole dollhouse virtual world thing in the Dangai to move to a different area because they couldn't make spiritual pressure appear in the version of the soul place that Iwak made. Sorry, I know I'm probably upsetting a lot of hardcore Bleach fans, but this was just a single read through where I wasn't stopping to think about all of the nouns. Anyway, that whole thing was weird and very contrived and quite unnecessary, but I guess also kind of cool. We'll see how it turns out in the anime. Reminder, this is all getting animated. I forgot that Nemu is secretly god tier. Also, she dies. RIP. Also, Mayuri secretly has a heart. Who knew? Also, Mayuri has an inner Xyzellaporo. I always say Xyzellaporo. I thought that was really cool. I remember really liking it the first time I read it and then forgetting about it, because apparently that's what I do to things that I really like. I love that this mad scientist has another slightly more evil mad scientist in his brain making fun of him. That's very mad scientist. I forgot, by the way, we're about just over halfway through now. I forgot the whole Kuriko and Nano thing. I think she's his niece, but she definitely gives off the I'm interested in you vibes, which is kind of weird. Let me know if I read into that incorrectly, but I forgot about the whole thing where he was hiding the sword from her, because the sword that was very conveniently needed in that fight is also the sword that just happens to be cursed and ends up killing every man that the Issei family ends up loving, which was cool to read about, but also weirdly specific. Here we go. I forgot that quote. Fucking Kira appears with a hole in his chest to cut down Chicken Sniper Man. In potentially the weirdest moment of the entire series, Kira, who got one-shotted at the start of the arc, appears not healed, but with the hole still in his chest, bloody... Sorry, not in his chest, kind of to the side under his armpit, so literally his torso, his armpits kind of hanging over his holy torso, and he appears and starts killing the fuckery that is that sniper Quincy, who turned into a bunch of evil chickens and ran around the Soul Society Vandenreich place. I have so many questions, and none of them were answered. Not a single one. If you're listening to this and going, oh my god, I forgot that happened. Hi, I was right there with you. That feeling of astonishment that you are now remembering, that was me a couple of nights ago. I forgot that Ishida's obvious fake treachery was just so he could suicide bomb the Sternritter Palace. Which, I mean, props for trying, but... oh god, here's another criticism I guess I could go into right now. It was so obvious from the very beginning that Ishida had not really turned traitor, because Ishida was too much of a well-developed character within this manga to actually turn traitor. We already knew his motivations wouldn't make sense for him to turn traitor, and that's fine. But he doesn't clue anyone into it, so it kind of feels like the IQ of the readers is being a little bit insulted, because it feels like the narrative's going, look, no, he really is traitor, and then a bunch of the Quincy's are like, we know you're not really a traitor, but we know that, but you still have to stay with us, so now you're fucked. And he's like, uh-oh, and it's like, I don't know, it was just done so poorly in my opinion. I feel like I'm completely guessing here, because I don't know Kubo at all. I don't know what he likes, but I feel like this is an attempt to Sasukeify Ishida a bit and have him become a bit of an anti-hero, and I don't think it worked. I forgot Urahara's Bankai, and I kind of misremembered it. All I could remember when he was fighting Naklavar was that Naklavar's power ended up being this big balloon thing, inside which a bunch of poison was happening. But I kind of misremembered that as being Urahara's Bankai for some reason, at least the kind of being inside a big bubble of power was concerned. Urahara's actual Bankai was more to do with stitching himself up and mending himself in the middle of a fight, which is weirdly not that interesting. Just kind of convenient for the situation he was in. Although I will say, I think it does work for his character in terms of he's the guy who invents Gigai, and he's the guy who saved all of those captains and assistant captains when they were supposed to be very much dying from the holification. Like, maybe he used his Bankai to help with that, you know? Like, it does fit, and I'm sure this Bankai was designed years before it ever showed up. It was just something that was very much hyped for years, and it kind of just... it was just kind of... yeah, okay, cool. I did remember Yurichi's cat thing, because who could forget that? Jesus Christ. Also, we still don't know the story of Yurichi's Zanpakuto, do we? Like, did she just completely forsake it for Shunko? Like, what's the deal with that? Maybe, if we ever get a Hell Arc, we'll find out what her Zanpakuto abilities are. I forgot that Grimmjow helped Urahara kill Naklavar, if that is his name. I think it's that clever. I thought Grimmjow just kind of got one shot off panel and never showed up again. What probably happened is that I remember being annoyed that I thought that that's what happened for many issues, and when he did finally show up again and help out by doing the awesome Grimmjow-esque metal thing of ripping his heart out, which was awesome, I just went, oh, Grimmjow did show up again, and didn't really cast that into memory. Sorry, Grimmjow, you deserved better. From me, that is. I think ripping someone's heart out is a suitable final appearance for you. Although it would have been nice to see him fight out, like, all out again. Like, to see what kind of powers, like, maybe a second Resurrection, oh my god, spooky man, Ulcriora, like Ulcriora had. Oh god. I'm assuming all of you hardcore Bleach fans who like to, well, actually people with all of the concrete facts because they've reread this 50 times over, I'm assuming they all left about 10 minutes ago, so I should be fine. If you're still here, hi, I appreciate you, and I welcome corrections in the comments. I don't want flack for not knowing everything, I'm sorry. I forgot the phrase, that perhaps a constant release type never existed in the first place in regards to Zaraki and Ichigo's Zanpakutos, and I think that's super fucking interesting because recently in the latest one-shot we saw Ichigo's Zangetsu. We saw Zangetsu in kind of classic form, like how he used to look in the Soul Society arc, and a lot of people on the sub, me included, were like, wait, why does he suddenly look like Soul Society Ichigo again? That's probably not Shikai, right? That's probably his, like, base-ass Zanpakuto. Very much like how Zaraki's rusty-ass Zanpakuto is also the basic unreleased state that it is. I think if that turns out to be true, that will be very cool, but also I did forget the final kind of state of Ichigo's Bankai, which is also just kind of the original Zangetsu, which I have mixed feelings about. But then I don't think Ichigo's in Bankai mode in the one shot, so I don't know what's going on. The next note, all in capital letters, how did I forget Zaraki's Bankai? I didn't just forget what his Bankai was, I forgot that he had a Bankai. Nozarashi's Shikai was so awesome that I remembered that, but somehow I forgot the awesome moment that is Zaraki's Bankai reveal. And it could be because he shows up in Bankai form for about a chapter or two and then gets off-screened, or not off-screened, sorry, wrong word. He gets kind of one-shot by the ass pull of a Quincy he's fighting against alongside Hitsugaya and Byakuya. Sorry, you could probably make a compilation of all the times I've said his name in different ways. Zaraki's Bankai is so awesome, and I think it's meant to parallel Vasto Lord Ichigo, but unfortunately there was just no enemy to really show it off against that he could one-shot and be like, wow, look how powerful he is, because the Quincy's were just so absurdly ass-pully powerful at the end of the manga. And I'm sorry to keep using that ass-pull word. The reason it sticks out in my mind and I can't stop myself from using it is because it was actually banned from the subreddit back in the day, because people, when they were criticizing the way the Quincy powers were working, they would often say, oh, it was an ass pull. Like, he pulled that power out of his ass and it's just very convenient for the guy he's fighting. And I think that is a criticism I do share. I think it's fine, but if I'm going to lean into this aspect of me criticizing this arc, I think that when it comes to Shinigami powers and Hollow powers, they kind of, for the most part, they're not always physical in form, don't get me wrong when I say this, but they have like a physical form. They have like laws that they adhere to that make sense, whereas the Quincy's, honestly, like, you have a sniper in his original form, and by his final form he's a bunch of screaming chickens running around. What the fuck? How does this relate to the original idea of Quincy's? And I get that I have just read through this entire arc, which is trying to reinvent that idea in my mind, but it just feels so just absurd and formless, and I don't like it. Oh, here's one I forgot to write down, actually, thinking of stuff that I don't like. I forgot that a couple of the Quincy's ended up being the Soul King's right arm, or is it the left arm? One of the arms that Ukitake didn't have, and the Soul King's heart. So I guess their crazy powers come from that a little bit, but also it's never explained why aspects of the Soul King became Quincy's and turned against the Soul King. What was that all about? Dunno. Never got explained or mentioned ever again. And the reason for a lot of stuff like this happening is because the manga, there's a lot of talk about how it was rushed towards the finish line. Shonen Jump were telling Kubo to wrap it up. Kubo's health was also a factor in this. I don't know if he's ever said as much himself, but I know it's been speculated that Kubo wasn't entirely happy with not having as much time to flesh out this arc as he would have liked. I don't necessarily blame him, and I still had a lot of enjoyment rereading this arc, so don't take my criticisms as me slamming the manga or anything toxic like that. This is just me looking at a story objectively and saying what did and did not work and how that affected my reading of it. I have so much respect for Kubo. But seriously, what was up with Chicken Man? I can't get that out of my head since the reread. Here's one that I remembered slightly before the reread, but only because of one of the things that prompted me to reread it in the first place. A really cool thing that some people have been doing is colorizing the manga and taking those colorizations and turning it into kind of a video experience with After Effects on it and music, like soundtrack accompanying it, and sometimes also reading the dialogue, although I don't always love that aspect of it. And through one of those styles of videos, I relived the Hitsugaya. Well, Hitsugaya's part of the fight against that big miracle dude towards the end of the manga, and through that I remembered that Hitsugaya becomes an adult when Daigen Hieronymaru fully awakens. He becomes an adult, and I completely forgot about that. But yeah, part of his Bankai is he glows up. Happens to a lot of characters in the Bleach universe, but it's never been associated with a Bankai before. I forgot that Ishida gets a new bow, but that's understandable because it only shows up for a couple of panels. We're now approaching the very final fight, and I still have some bullet points here. I forgot that Ishin and Ryuken show up at the end, although that was really just for Ryuken to throw the silver bullet / arrow, at Ishida and tell him to use that on Iwak, which very conveniently halts Iwak's powers for a second so that Ichigo can finish him off. But hey, that's no more convenient than Urahara having fired a secret Kido into Aizen many chapters ago so that he could be finished off. You know, same kind of concept, I guess. I guess the execution of it was slightly different now. I forgot that Ichigo's Quincy sword turns white when he pumps Quincy Reiatsu into it. Is it Reiatsu? That's something that's been confusing me all arc, because they're like, oh no, Quincy don't use Reiatsu, they use Reishi, which is absorbing spirit particles from around them to fight. But then a lot of allusion is made to Quincy Reiatsu, so or spiritual pressure, I guess I should say. So yeah, very confused on that front. I forgot just how the ordering of Ichigo's final powers kind of worked. So he starts up in his Shikai dual wielding one sword, obviously, for the kind of Shinigami / Hollow combination power he had up through the Arankar arc, and one sword for his Quincy powers. I forgot that then the Quincy sword could be turned white with Quincy powers, which I guess made it stronger. That was kind of never really made clear, but kind of, I guess, obvious just to look at. And then alongside making his Quincy sword white, he also had that bit of hollow mask to kind of really show all of his powers coming together. And then I forgot that the Bankai was, or I didn't forget, but I forgot how it looked, that the Bankai was the merging of the swords. So the white sword kind of covering the black sword as like this big two-hander like we're used to seeing Ichigo fight with. And then I thought it was interesting that Iwak breaks the Quincy part of a sword but isn't able to break the Shinigami part of a sword, and that's the kind of like original looking Zangetsu that slays him in the end. One thing I love about that, by the way, a lot of imagery surrounding Iwak is the idea of him being a shadow, and Zangetsu, it translates to, if I remember right, something to do with Heavenly Moon Cutter. I know that's not accurate, but the idea is that it's a sword that can cut the moon. So when you consider that Iwak gets cut in half by a moon cutting sword, and he is personified a shadow, which is what is brought on by the night. I'm explaining this terribly, you get my point. It's cool imagery. I forgot how twisty and turny the final fight is. I thought it was just Ichigo and Orihime versus Iwak, and it kind of turns out alright in the end. But it's very much like, I've overcome despair so many times before, I'm ready to face you, and I'm like, fuck yeah, this is it, let's go, Ichigo, and then he fucking gets his sword cut in half. I was like, wait, I don't remember this happening, what the fuck? The note for that was the broken Bankai trolling. So, I forgot that Ishida had a shrift, and it was the antithesis, which I think is cool, because it's like he is the antithesis to Ichigo in the earlier parts of the manga, when it was a lot more basic Shinigami, Quincy, and they both kind of have, like, when the arc where he's introduced and they have that hollow killing tournament, and you learn that they're very much alike, but obviously he's basically the antithesis of Ichigo, so it's cool that his power reflects that, even if it doesn't reflect it at this point in the manga, because they're both Quincy's, which is something they never get around to talking about, but that's just another thing that was lost in the weeds. Okay, we're almost done, I promise. I forgot that Tsukishima does end up showing up again with the mega ass pull I wrote down, because he uses his Book of the End to insert himself in, or to insert into the past that Ichigo's Bankai did not get broken, which, I mean, I respect it, because it was a previously established power, and he was previously established as having been in the Soul Society, but also it was a little bit like, oh, come on. I forgot that Ichigo and Aizen fought together. I forgot what Aizen even did after they all went up to Ryo. And he was just kind of left there sitting in his chair. I was like, wait, whatever did happen to Aizen? Aizen joined a fight against Iwak because... question marks. I think he does briefly explain that he is against Iwak creating a new world because he would then be beneath Iwak, and he doesn't want to be beneath anyone, and that's also why he opposed the Soul King. That's not the vibe I was necessarily getting from him in the original Aizen-based arcs. I thought he had a motivation very similar to Iwak's, actually, that he thought the machine of life and death was something that needed to be broken and changed, but there you go. I guess if you wanted to get all essay-ish with that, you could take that conversation back to Urahara versus Naklavar, where Naklavar's like, oh, I don't serve the Soul King because I'm loyal to him. Sorry, Soul King. I don't serve Iwak because I'm loyal to him. I serve him because I'm interested in seeing what new world he would create. And Urahara's like, no, a real scientist would want to create that world. They wouldn't want to watch somebody else create it. And Urahara and Aizen are meant to be very alike in their scientific mindedness, and Aizen would perhaps have the same feelings towards Iwak. But I'll get to writing that essay some other day. So yeah, I forgot that Ichigo and Aizen fight together, and how quickly Ichigo adapts to fighting with Aizen, and how Aizen uses Ichigo's lack of knowledge of... basically, look, I forgot everything about the last 20 chapters. Everything. Every single detail. And the final note, I forgot that Zangetsu lives up to its name. I forgot that the last form of Zangetsu we ever see is basically the original form of Zangetsu that we first saw. So, in a nutshell, that's pretty much everything I forgot about the 1,000 Year Blood War arc. I did warn you it was a lot. Are we finished talking about it? Hell no. So I addressed some of my criticisms during that psycho babble. I want to end off talking about what I loved about the 1,000 Year Blood War arc, because there is a lot to love. As much as I'm not a huge fan of how Quincy powers ended up manifesting, I do love that this arc took a step away from the one-to-one power scaling of, oh, this kind of class is the equivalent of this Hollow's version of that class, and this kind of power is the equivalent of this kind of power, and the Espadas are all numbered, and you can figure out their power by their number. They moved away from that. It was a lot less, what's the word? Linear is the wrong term, but it's close enough. My brain's a little bit broken. I've been rambling for over half an hour now. But I'm not just talking about the fact that the Quincy's are lettered instead of numbered. Which, by the way, must have been hell to translate. Props to the translators. Because when you think about it, kanji is more like 2 letters together, right? But anyway, sorry, potential ADD brain. I'm also talking about the fact that the captains kind of got power-ups not just from like, oh, there's a class above captain class which we've managed to hit, or there's a further release in a Bankai which we've recently discovered, which would have been very easy to write and very easy for, quick cool points. No, it was a lot more, oh, I've trained a bit more and the truer form of my Bankai is this, and it makes sense. I appreciate that they took pre-existing characters which we already knew a lot about, and they really dived into like the quintessential essence of that character and how they could be powered up in a way that made sense without breaking the laws of its own universe and overtly retconning the power dynamics in a series which, let's be frank, in an arc which does unfortunately retcon a few things. Not always maladroitly, I can't believe I just used that word, blame Brandon Sanderson. Not clumsily, but yeah, it is there. There are retcons. Having read this entire manga from start to finish, knowing how everything plays out, even if I did forget some of the details along the way, it doesn't feel like a lot of the stuff that we learned in the Thousand Year Blood War arc was written with... I don't think that arc was intended to come out the way it necessarily did from the start of the manga. I know that apparently Kubo planned to have a Quincy arc as like the meat of the manga, but I don't think he really envisioned the Quincy's becoming what they ended up being. Sorry, I verged into criticism again, didn't I? Something I love about this arc is that Rukia's Bankai happens. Not only does it happen, but Byakuya is like really supportive of her. He's like, it is a magnificent Bankai. It's so nice. Damn though, I wouldn't want to have her Bankai. It seems like an ass to manage. I love that by the end of this arc, it really feels like the entire universe is coming together to fight this apocalyptic evil. And we have so many characters from so many different arcs coming together, and if there is a Hell arc coming at any point in the future, I would love to see that kind of thing happen again, of just an arc full of Shinigami versus Shinigami, of Quincy's versus Quincy's, of Hollows versus Hollows, and then all three against all three, because there's going to be good and evil in both. I love, even if it felt a little bit retconny, I love that we learned that Unohana Retsu is actually Kenpachi Yachiru. I loved everything about that reveal and the way it panned out for Zaraki and her. Like, it just makes her character so fucking interesting. Like, that the jokey, like, oh, she's the really friendly one that you don't want to piss off because that would be scary, is actually like, no, you really don't want to piss her off because she's actually, like, a murderous psychopath underneath all of that niceness. And, like, how does she go from being that murderous psychopath to being this caring woman who leaves that note to Asani at the end, you know, who, like, it wasn't a lie, clearly. And it's also kind of suggested that Isani knew some of those aspects about her, or at least was taught those aspects about her in the letter, because when Zaraki tells her that she died, she's like, I see, you know, as in like, that's fine, she died happy because of this. Yeah, sorry, to cut that short, I loved everything about that, and I loved everything that went on with Zaraki. Like, there is so much in earlier Bleach of potential. This character has so much potential. They weren't even using their full power. But this arc was like, alright, here's them using their full power. And it feels like every time, or almost every time, it fucking delivers. Except for Hisagi's Bankai. That never ended up showing up, but Kubo himself made a joke about that in the penultimate issue, which I found funny. I'm sure there are some aspects of this arc which I haven't mentioned or I'm skimming over. I promise you, it's not on purpose. It's just that if I try and cover everything, we'll be here for hours. Suffice to say that I have absolutely loved my reread of Bleach. I got about 20 or 30 chapters from the end, and it really started to hit me that, like, oh fuck, I'm putting myself through Bleach ending again. Bleach is such a core part of my kind of fictional core, I guess I would say, of stories that have really shaped me, of, you know, stories that really mean a lot to me, that have left an imprint on me, and it's weird to think that it lay dormant for years after the manga ended, just because there was no more anime, there was no more manga. And after a while, no matter how much you love a story, if there's no more of that story, you don't think about it for a while. And then eventually I was like, hey, it's time to reread Bleach. And it all came rushing back, just how much I love this world. Since I'm already being gushy, let me talk about one final thing that I see people talking about a lot in regards to the end of this manga, and it's the couplings of Ichigo and Orihime versus Rukia and Renji. A lot of people still say that Ichigo and Rukia should have been a thing, and there were a lot of fan theories that Ichigo was going to go to Soul Society and become a captain, and maybe he will when he dies, but he's still a human. And I think it's a really nice ending that Kubo went with, of Ichigo gets to go off and live a human life, which we see a lot more about in the one shot. I think that, yeah, sure, if the manga went from the very first arc to the final time skip, it would be a bit like, oh, that's a bit random. You know, like Orihime obviously always had feelings for Ichigo, but Ichigo and Rukia definitely seemed like they would work at the start of this manga. And maybe they would have at the start of this manga, but it wouldn't have lasted because Rukia was, you know, not hiding from her duties as a Shinigami, but like unable to fulfill them, and was technically on the run from Soul Society, and Ichigo didn't know so much about Soul Society and who Rukia really was and all this. Not to mention she's bloody 200 years old. I think they definitely had chemistry, but not in a lasting way. And I think it's much more wholesome that their relationship turned into what it turned into. I think from about halfway through the manga onwards, Ichigo and Orihime really started to kind of, you know, make a lot more sense. And besides it just being one-sided, especially in the final fight when Ichigo is basically like, come on Orihime, let's go take down Iwak. Like he kind of like recognized, and I know this shouldn't all be one-sided, like he finally recognizes my ability, but he does, and it's sweet. And if you wanted Ichigo and Rukia, I'm not going to say you're wrong, I'm not going to be like, oh, you're an idiot, you know, everyone has their own opinions, everyone feels the way they do about these characters, but I do draw the line at the people who go on Twitter and message Kubo himself and go, you should give us Ichigo Rukia, you did it wrong. It's like, at the end of the day, the guy who made the story wrote the story and wrote it the way he did for a reason. So, you know, you kind of got to accept the way that it went. Of course, if you want to go and post like fan stories about Ichigo and Rukia being a thing instead, or even eventually afterwards at another time, that's perfectly fine and good. You do you make your canon and you have fun with it. I fully believe you should be able to do that without people coming and dumping on you for that. But at the end of the day, Bleach isn't really a romance. It's it's a shonen, and it was my first shonen, and it will, you know, always have a place in my heart, and I love it so much, and I will probably reread this a few years down the line again. So I probably won't make videos about it that time, but who's to say? We still have the promised Thousand Year Blood War arc animated anime arc. We know the anime's returning. I don't know if they've actually announced for sure that they're doing Thousand Year Blood War, but it would be really weird and out of left field if they didn't. I just want to throw it out there, but I'm not sure they've explicitly stated that. But if they do, I would really like them to kind of flesh out some of those kind of potholes of things that didn't get fully explained. Like, there was a lot of stuff that got paid off, but there was some stuff that got left by the wayside. They could go into some more detail on the fights. Like in the first kind of invasion wave of this arc, Zaraki takes out 3 Stern Ritters without us ever seeing the fight. They could go into a bit more detail on that, like just use it as an excuse to make a badass animated sequence of him ripping these Quincy's apart before they have a chance to really react. That would be cool. But it's been 42 minutes. If you're still listening, thank you so much. You must be as passionate about this manga as I am. Please, by all means, leave a comment down below. Let me know if I got anything wrong. Let me know if your opinion differs to mine. Let me know if you just love Bleach as much as I do. Thank you for hanging out. I'm probably going to try and read Dragon Ball for my next manga, because I don't know anything about Dragon Ball Z. I've never tried it. Well, I've tried it. I've tried the anime. I've tried a couple of episodes, but I bounced off of it purely because my attention span sucks. But what I want to do instead of trying the anime again is read it from the very start, from Dragon Ball, and see what it's like. I don't know if there's any differences between the manga and the anime, but I'm going to give it a try because I've got the Shonen Jump subscription, and instead of jumping into rereading Naruto, which is something I could very much do, I want to try something new first, so I'm going to go and do that. So look out for thoughts on that. It'll either be in video format in a few weeks or months, or however long it takes me to get through the first or few arcs, or whenever feels like a good stopping point to talk about it, or it'll just be on my Twitter. If I feel like I'm bouncing off it, you'll probably find me talking about it there at Kritigri. So that's it for this behemoth of a video. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and I will see you in the next one. I'm going to go and rest my voice now and try not to cry, because there's no more Bleach.